Is James Harden still a commodity? We'll talk about that more next on Locked On 76ers.
You are Locked On 76ers, your daily Philadelphia 76ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On 76ers your first listen. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. This is Keith Pompey. I'm the host of Locked On 76ers, and I got my man, John Mitchell, back in the building. What's up, Jay Mitch? How you doing, bro?
Keith, I'm good, man. I can't complain. How you doing, bro?
I can't complain either. But
I mean,
listen,
you could. We don't have enough
but
time
you don't
on
want
the
to
podcast.
listen. But you don't want to listen. Mitch, we got to talk about this. We know, this whole thing with James Harden, a Hall of Famer, right? Future Hall of Famer,
Mm-hmm.
One-time MVP, 3-time scoring champion, the whole nine. But the Sixers can't trade him. Like, there's no interest at all in him.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is he still a commodity? Because here's the deal. Like, this brother is like, training camp or media day starts Monday, training at the practice facility over in Camden, New Jersey. Training camp is going to be at Fort Collins, Colorado, at Colorado State on Tuesday through Friday. A couple weeks ago or a month ago, where there was a report that James doesn't intend to come back. As of last week, the Sixers haven't even heard from him to know what's going to happen. And, there are times where certain players, like Dame Lillard, for instance, he said he didn't want to come back. Dame Lillard is a commodity. There's a lot of teams out there who wanted Dame Lillard.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up being traded to the Milwaukee Bucks. James Harden says he wants out. He wanted to go to the Clippers. He's still here. Nobody else is going to. Is he still a commodity?
No takers.
No takers.
I think that he is a commodity, but he's not a commodity to the degree that he thinks he is. I think James Harden in his mind is still 2017, and the Philadelphia Eagles are on the precipice of winning their first Super Bowl. But then the reality of it is, we are 5-6 years removed from the elite James Harden, and as we saw, Daryl Moore, you know better than anybody else, tried to move this guy, but Daryl Moore was also like, I can't get ripped off for with this guy, so I had to get something of value. And say what you will about Daryl Moore, he works the phones, he works to make deals happen. I don't think he's that great of a general manager, but he does push to make things happen. And the stuff that he kept putting his fishing hook into the water, looking to pull out that gigantic bass, and he kept coming back with minnows for James, man. So, I just don't think that he's a commodity, and that's problematic for the Sixers because now Milwaukee is better. Miami is a better organization than the 76ers from top to bottom. And if the 76ers are trying to stay in the hunt, they need to do something they can't just come to training camp. And if James shows up, and personally, I don't think that he will, because number one, it's in Colorado. It's the atmosphere is thinner there, and we know James hasn't been on his Peloton first thing in the morning and running the hills of wherever he's been chilling this summer. We know James hasn't been doing those things. So if James were to have stepped on that scale yesterday at the weigh-in at the Canelo Charlo fight, we might be like, I don't like what that scale is telling us. So, James is up there, man. He's advanced in age. You can't take away from him what he's done as a player in the 82 games of all of the regular seasons. He's been an elite player in. But right now, like you said, people were lined up to say, hey, let me get Dame. And now you got him with the Greek Freak. Nobody's doing that with James Harden. Nobody's doing that with James Harden. He is not the precious commodity. He's not gold or platinum. He's sterling silver.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where it's funny because when James Harden was in his prime, when
Mm-hmm.
he was the guy scoring all these points and doing everything, you had a lot of people being critical of him. I mean, Kobe even said he liked him, but he
Yeah.
felt like that style of play wasn't championship basketball. Barkley and and all that on TNT.
Mm-hmm.
They all came out and said you can't win basketball that way. It's like
Yeah.
one guy just hogging the ball and scoring a lot of points.
That was
Well,
their era.
that,
That was their
yeah,
era.
there was their era. And now you look at it, and you say, well, you're no longer doing that. Now you first of all, you lost a step and you
Right.
became a facilitator. Now, I do feel as though if James Harden is comfortable with being a facilitator and getting other people involved and comes in tip-top shape,
Mhm.
I think that he's a commodity. He's
Yeah.
just not the commodity that he was before. He can help you win a championship. He's no longer the headliner. He's now a co-star, right?
Right.
On a
Right.
team, the second or third option, right? Um, Maybe even on a championship team, a third option, right? That's what you want
Yeah.
him at, facilitator. So for that point, yes, he's not that commodity. Now the problem is that who are you going to get? Are you going to get the guy who realizes that say, hey, I have to be a dude that's going to be the facilitator, third option, get everybody involved, do this
Right.
and that? Or are you going to get the guy that's unhappy with that role and wants to be the man? And therein lies the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Another problem is, are you going to get a guy who is going to be quote unquote dedicated to the craft?
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't get me wrong, he's a
Yeah.
hard worker, a
Mm-hmm.
hard worker. Like, I have
Mm-hmm.
never, I'll be honest with you, as far as practicing and as far as like stuff he does, like pregame and
Mm-hmm.
post shoot around, I've never been around a guy like that who worked as hard.
Wow, I've never heard that. That's a
Yeah,
first. I've never heard
but
that.
the knock is he also likes to party. So
Yeah.
with that being, now you can look at it when you're young, you can keep it up, but as you get older,
Right.
it's hard. Like, yeah, man, I've never. Now again, I only covered the Sixers, right? So
Right.
I can't compare him to Steph Curry. I can't compare him to Kevin Durant. I can't compare him to LeBron James and none of those guys. But
Mm-hmm.
as far as my 10 seasons of covering the Sixers, I've never been around anybody who worked as hard as he did while he's in the gym.
Right.
With that being said, you also have to figure out if a team is willing to say, okay, we're going to let you on off days fly to Houston. We're going to
Yeah.
let you on off days fly to Miami,
Uh-huh.
fly to Las Vegas and have a good time and just be okay with you just showing up the morning of that practice in time for the practice.
Mm.
So therein lies the thing where it's like, okay, when you were putting up a lot of points, then you were the headliner.
Right.
Yeah, you consider him a commodity.
He
But now
had the
you
talent
can't
and
do that.
merit.
Huh?
He had the talent then that merited that aristocratic NBA treatment that certain players get. I
Mhm.
mean, but that's where he's no longer there.
Exactly. So that's
No
the
longer
thing.
there.
So we agree that he's still a commodity, but he's not the commodity that he used to be. And
Right.
with that being said, teams aren't going to put up with that.
Right.
With that being said, he's probably no longer the headliner in the league. Like, for instance, teams aren't looking at it now in the NBA schedule. They're not saying, okay, James Harden against Steph Curry.
Right.
Now it's more like Joel Embiid and Nikola
Absolutely.
Jokic. It's
Absolutely.
Joel Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Yep.
It's more like Joel Embiid against Jimmy Butler. Things like that. Those are the headliners. It's no longer James against Steph.
Right.
James against LeBron. James against, just name any other elite guard. Russell Westbrook is not Chris Paul. Is at that time that ship has sailed. You know what I mean? That's
right.
But when we get back, John has some strong thoughts about why I already talked about, but we're going to revisit it. But I talked about why I felt like the Sixers need to go after Drew Holiday. And John has some tough thoughts, tough statements about how he feels like it is. You feel like it's time for Daryl Morey to do something, right?
Absolutely. It's time for him to, while they're still in Joel's window, forever how long that lasts, you have an all-star sitting out there who's familiar with Philadelphia, who's still an elite defender. And, you can have yourself a really nice backcourt. You can have yourself a really, really, really nice backcourt if you can bring Drew back here.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that when we get right back. But right now, I want to talk to y'all about DoorDash, right? Thing about DoorDash is pretty good. I remember back in the day, Mitch, like DoorDash, you just got like food from their cooked food. Mm-hmm. Now you can get groceries, right? You know what I mean? You get people doing all types of, you could go grocery shopping because see, here's the thing. Breakfast time, missing the syrup for your pancakes or just ran out your favorite coffee creamer. With DoorDash grocery delivery, you can get what you want right when you need it, right? That's crazy, right? People are doing that.
DoorDash. To me, that's amazing, man.
Yeah, love the convenience of getting what you want right to your door. With DoorDash grocery delivery, you can stock up for the week or the last minute cravings, right? So get 50% off your first DoorDash order up to $20 value when you use the code LOCKEDONNBA at checkout. It's a limited time offer and terms apply. That's 50% off up to 20, no minimum subtotal. The zero delivery fees on your first order when you download the DoorDash app in the App Store or enter the code LOCKEDONNBA. Don't forget that code LOCKEDONNBA for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. Do it today, people. Definitely do it today.
If DoorDash wants to impress me, Keith, and when I run out of coffee cream and I poured that cup, the question is, can they get the coffee creamer here before my coffee gets cold? It's already in the cup.
Hey, if you tell them, dude, I give you a $20 tip.
It'll be
You try.
Yeah, you're probably right. Cash talk, you know what walks.
I know, right? We'll probably try. But look, man, so here's the thing. Like, you look at it and you can argue that, the Sixers have been extremely active. Like, and sometimes you question, are they active or are they just saying they're active? Or maybe like, and the reason why I say that is because, like, there have been times where the Sixers had their name in a hat for certain people, but they were asking for like stuff that you knew they couldn't get.
Right.
So now here we come to this point, and then there's Drew Holiday. Now there's a sweepstake, and Drew Holiday has a teams that he wouldn't mind playing for. They say, right? Report. Let's say Miami, the Sixers, the Lakers, the Clippers, the New York Knicks. There are teams that are all in the mix, right? I'm telling you, right about now, the Sixers always said that they want an all-star type of player. Drew Holiday is an all-star.
Yep.
Or they want to get assets that would deliver them an all-star. Now, the problem is the Portland Trailblazers, who Drew Holiday was traded to from the Milwaukee Bucks, want a youth movement. They don't want James Harden, right? So what happens is you have to get a third team involved, and you have to come up with a package that's better. it may be hard to get Drew without going a third team involved and going to the Clippers.
Yeah.
So for you though, you feel like this is a must, right? You
I
feel
do.
like you do. Okay, can you
Yeah.
elaborate on that?
Yeah. I think that, we've been hearing about, the greatness of Daryl Morey. We heard about it, and the analytics posse, who brought you Sam Hinkie in the process. Prior to that, before that, Harris wanted Daryl Morey to be a general manager before, and more so than Hinkie. It's time now for Daryl Morey to really make a move, uh, beyond going to the analytics conference and beyond all these things that he does. It's time for him to say this, the 76ers are right are still in the mix. They're in the mix. I don't think right now they are a legitimate title contender, because only because of the Harden situation. Um, if you're talking about, will one of your top players even be on the roster this year, or is he going to show up at training camp, you almost automatically disqualify from that level, because that's one of your issues. John Moore needs to go out and make the Drew Holiday thing happen. Now, he can't, you know, the Sixers once had a plethora of assets. They no longer have those assets. They've moved away. They've made some moves that have cost them, and they've done some things in the moments, and some of it their hand has been forced. It's time for Morey to finally earn his keep and make a move. Now, I give him credit for the Kelly Oubre Jr. I do. Jumping on that it was almost like he got on the phone with Howie Roseman and got some insight from our great Philadelphia Eagles general manager, and was able to effectuate a deal to bring Kelly Oubre Jr. here. But the 76ers, if you add a Drew Holiday to that backcourt, guy who's still in his prime, guy who has some injury situations, but if you put him in the backcourt with Maxey, and you move on, if you're able to unload a malcontented player, which is what Harden is right now. Still, a commodity, but the sterling silver, not the gold or platinum. If you move on from him, and if you can bring a Drew Holiday in here and pair him up with Joel, a guy who is, I covered Drew, before, right before you came on the beat. I covered Drew. He's a good he was a good locker room guy when he was the youngest player in the league. He was a good locker room guy. He's mature now. He's won a championship. He's a competitor. And if you need to say, we need to stop hearing the same line that, oh, well, this guy wants to go to the sandy beaches of Miami. I mean, I get all that. Or this guy wants to be in the limelight in New York, which, for as great as New York is as a city, it's never been able to really. The Knicks have never really been able, the Knicks that's a whole different discussion. But Brooklyn, which seems to be the hot space to get for players to go to now, everybody wants to play them in Brooklyn. But let's see what Daryl Morey can do, because the fans of Philadelphia are not just going to go for the okie doke. The fans of Philadelphia are not going to say, okay, we'll trot this team out here. And knowing, 40 years after the 76ers won their last championship, that there's no hope for them to eclipse a Miami, or specifically a Milwaukee right now, or even Boston. With less, well, I'm gonna say less. The pieces have to come together. But yeah, it's time for Daryl Morey to make that move, to really put his handprint, his imprint on a signature move that people can look to and say, okay, the 76ers are trending in the right direction. And that move would be to make sure that you can get Drew Holiday here. It's going to take more than a cheesesteak.
Yeah, it's going to take more. And the thing is, there are other teams that have, like, here's the thing. A lot of people are talking about the Clippers, right? Let's get the Clippers involved, right? But if I'm the Clippers, why don't I just trade? Why don't I just get Drew outright? You know what I mean? If
Right.
what I mean? Like, why would I do that? And you look at the Sixers, and the thing is I did some thinking. Like I was all thinking, like, well, what about Tyrese Maxey? Is he a guy that you want to include? And I don't.
No.
If it was for Dame Lillard, I would, but
Yeah.
not for Drew Holiday. Like
Right.
I feel like you Drew Holiday, Tyrese Maxey, Tobias Harris, and Joel is a formidable team,
It
formidable
is.
force. But I feel like if you take Maxey out of that equation,
They're not a formidable team.
nah, they're
No.
not. So you can't do that. So then outside of that, you say, well, okay, well, the Clippers could get Harden, but then when you look at Drew, who is one of those things where Drew might be a better fit right now for him.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He might be a better
absolutely.
fit. So it's kind of sort of like, wow. And then Miami, you look at him with Miami, it's kind of like, he's not Dame, of course, but
Right.
he's
Right.
the guard they need.
Yeah.
And they like toughness. They like everything he brings. So great dude, this and that. So that's the thing. But yeah, you're right. It's one of those things where Gerald Moore is going to be judged by this.
Right.
And
And rightfully so.
He's going to be judged by this. He's going to be judged by this because it's like, the one move that he made his signature move is getting James Harden. And then
Right.
a year and a half later, Harden wants out.
Right.
And
Right.
the team still hasn't gotten out of the second round.
Right. So it wasn't a fix. It was just a patch on your tire.
It was a patch on the tire, and you can look at it as, Joel got MVP and things like that, but you can argue that was because of the way Doc put him in situations.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can argue that. So, yeah, that's where we are. But when we get right back after this quick break, we're going to, say who do you think, who you looking for stepping up, and who would you like to see evolve as a player, so to speak, in this training camp preseason. We'll be right back. All right, Mitch, that was quick. I told you.
That was quicker than the flash.
Quicker than flash. So who would you like to see evolve as a player in this preseason?
If I the two guys in my mind that I'm really thinking about, I would have to say one is B-Ball Paul. I really want to see him, the Chicago product continue to evolve. And two would be Mo Bamba. I want to see Mo Bamba accept that this is potentially, he's at not a last stop, but he's in a precarious position in the NBA. He's in a position where he can either begin to make some real money or he can just continue to ride it out. I think, B-Ball Paul, we saw that Dot was making a mistake by not playing him more, in hindsight. I know there were some grumblings and some grousings that B-Ball Paul was not always up to snuff on a playbook, but that's when he was a younger guy. When they played him last year, he showed you he could rebound. He showed you he could defend. He showed you he played with energy. And the one thing we'd like to see from B-Ball Paul would be for him to develop into more of an offensive threat, to begin to show signs, that people don't have to just look at him defensively and just cheat and help off on somebody else. So he's the guy I would like to see emerge. I would like to see, and not necessarily emerge, because I don't think he's one of those players who's just going to emerge. Like we looked at how Maxey has just emerged with the 76ers. Now he looks like somebody should have been taken in the top 5 when he was drafted. I like to see the continued evolution of B-Ball Paul as a player and as an offensive threat.
Yeah, that's a good one. B-Ball Paul is a great one. I mean, I think that they got a lot banking on him, right? So I mean, so you think that has to happen. But if I have, if I had to pick one person, the one person I would pick would be Furkan Korkmaz. I feel like is now or never for him.
Yeah.
Right? Is now or never for Furkan Korkmaz to show what he can do. But
Right.
then if there was another player who I really want to see who can do something this year, because I feel like his career could also at least could bank on this is Jaden Springer, right?
I knew you were going to say that.
Now, and Jaden Springer is a third year guard. You know what I mean? The Sixers are they have a deadline of what is it? They have a deadline of October the 31st to pick up his club option for the 2024-25 season of $4 million, right? So typically guys get their option picked up, but he's a guy who rarely played. But when we talk about Furkan Korkmaz, what Furkan can do is because Furkan Korkmaz requested to be traded from here twice. Once was several years ago. People forget the Sixers didn't pick up his option, but they didn't have any options out there after that season. So they signed him to a 3-year deal. Now a 3-year, $15 million deal. Now he's in the third year of that deal right now. And last year he asked to be traded. Now he's in the third year and he's making $5.3 million. Last season was his worst season from statistically since his rookie year. He averaged 3.8 points but he shot 39% for 1% from the 3-point line, but he also played in only 37 games, which was his fewest amount since his rookie season. Now that rookie season, he averaged 1.6 points. Now the crazy part about it is, you look back at it, during the 2019-20 and 2021 season, Furkan looked like he was on his way. He was a guy who the 2019-20 season, a guy who was averaging 9.8 points. He shot a career best 40.2% from three. The next season, he averaged 9.1 points, and he shot 37% from free, right? But since then, it's just been a struggle for my man.
I thought he was poorly, I thought he was poorly utilized by Doc last year.
I would agree.
But,
I feel like when Doc came here, he felt like he can use him as a ball handler. Remember, he would put him in there ahead of other people. But what he is more or less a shooter. And then also, I think Doc is like a defensive-minded coach. He would get a little not upset, but he felt like people were taking advantage of him on a defensive end, and he would sit him. So, but at the same time, there was a time where he had a lot of trade value. But as you say, because Doc rarely played him, it became a point where his stock dropped, his trade values dropped. You know what I mean?
Shake Milton saw some of that last season.
Yeah, he saw a lot of that. I mean, it was one point where Shake was the man in the middle of the season, and then the beginning of the season, then all of a sudden he didn't play. Now here's the thing about Jay. Go ahead. What you about to say? Go ahead.
One of Doc's abilities is likable as Doc can be, and I know you have your spats. We've watched your spats with him on many occasions, only because you were doing your job. But he has the tendency to take an eraser to a player who's making a contribution to the roster, and to make that and to almost do the job of the opposition and make that and marginalize that guy instead of getting him on the floor. You know what I mean? And I love Doc. He was one of my favorite coaches to cover, but that's a criticism of him.
Yeah, it is. It is. And then, I guess one criticism is development of young players as well. Like we talk about Maxey, but Maxey got to play out of need. Like people forget Maxey's first real game, and he had like 30 something points. It was a game where everybody, like a lot of people had COVID and they were sick, and they played the Denver Nuggets, and they just turned Maxey loose, and he got off. Right, he had a great game. But then you look at Paul Reed. I mean, you may have some people arguing and saying he should have played Paul Reed more early on, right?
Right.
You look at Isaiah Joe, who was a guy who he had, who basically he was raining threes when he was in there, but then he didn't play him. And then last preseason, he was the best 3-point shooter, and he gets cut.
Yeah.
Charles Bassey, a guy who got in and
that was a huge
played well, and then he got cut. So now you get the Jaden Springer, a guy who comes in and doesn't get a chance at all. Like he played in 2 games as a rookie, 2 games for a total of 6 minutes, right? He averaged 1 point. He had averaged 1 point, 1 block, and 1 rebound in 3 minutes. That's not bad. Like a block in 2, right? 1 point, 1 block in 3 minutes. But then last year he played in a total of 16 games. Most of them was basically mop-up duty, right? He averaged 2.6 points. He averaged 5.6 minutes, right? He averaged right below a rebound, 0.9 rebound. But when you look at his total, here's a guy, the one game that he really played in was the next to last game of the season against the Atlanta Hawks, when the Sixers basically benched their starting lineup and their 6-man, right? He started that game. He played in 34 minutes and 9 seconds. He had 19 points. He shot 8 for 13 from the field. He made 2 or 3 3-pointers, so he shot 66.7 from 3. He had 3 assists, 2 rebounds, 1 block, and 1 steal. Now he did foul out, but at the same time, he played well.
He was
and they
getting,
won.
He was getting his minutes, and he was like, "Hey man, I'm gonna show how often do I get this opportunity?" So he
was
took
balling.
the time.
So there's some people who may question and say he can't shoot, he can't do this, he can't do that. He's just a defensive guy. But I think the guy plays with grit. I think he has toughness. I think he's a player in this league. You don't know how long he's a player with the Sixers. Now, again, they got Nick Nurse, who's a different type of a younger coach. A different coach than Doc. So we'll learn a lot. I want to learn a lot about him this preseason. I really do.
I think Sixers fans are wondering. They have. You hate seeing these players who played during the summer league the year they were drafted, and then you don't see them again until the next summer league. You want, like you said, you want to see this team demonstrate some player development capacity. And he's a perfect example. I mean, you look at him, you say he's got a nice body. He looks like to be a little more athletic, sturdy. And what can he do? He's not a stash player. Let's find out if he can play or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. But look, I want to thank you for being on the podcast again, my man.
Absolutely.
I want to thank y'all for listening. Remember, this podcast is free and available, and you can get it wherever you get your podcast at. But make sure you go to the YouTube channel, Locked On 76ers YouTube channel. When you go there, click on the Liberty Bell. That does 2 things. It makes you become a new subscriber. You can also like the podcast, too. You become a new subscriber, and you get notifications when new pods come out. So next week I'll be I'll have one Monday, and then after that I'll do these podcasts from Colorado Springs. So I'll have a lot of information for you, and hopefully my man Mitch will be back on if he has the time. But I want to thank y'all, and I want y'all to have a great weekend.
Peace out, y'all.
Deuces.